Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
All right, well, today we're taking a trip to Wonderland.
Wonderland.
Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, to be precise.
Ah, a classic.
You probably know the basic story, right?
Yeah, I think most people have at least heard of it.
But we're going beyond the surface this time.
Oh.
We're exploring a version retold by Jennifer Bassett and illustrated by Nilesh Mistry.
Sounds intriguing.
It is. We'll be uncovering some unexpected insights, I think.
I'm all ears.
Our journey takes us from down the rabbit hole to the pool of tears, all the way to a mad tea party.
Quite the itinerary.
It all starts with Alice, just completely bored.
Bored.
Oh, yeah. Stuck with her sister.
Ah, sibling boredom. I know it well.
Her sister's absorbed in a book, and Alice is just restless.
I can relate to that. Sometimes you just need a little excitement.
Right. Alice even thinks about how books without pictures or conversations are dull.
Isn't that the truth? Pictures and conversations definitely spice things up.
And then, boom, this white rabbit comes rushing by.
Oh, a white rabbit.
Yeah, with pink eyes, a pocket watch, muttering about being late.
Now that's not something you see every day.
Talk about a spark to the imagination.
It's like the story saying, hold on tight, things are about to get weird.
And Alice, without hesitation, follows the rabbit right down a rabbit hole.
Down the rabbit hole she goes.
That's Alice for you. Always curious, always up for an adventure.
I admire that impulsiveness. It can lead to amazing discoveries.
It's a long fall down that rabbit hole, too.
Long fall.
She even notices cupboards and bookshelves on the walls as she's falling.
Wow. Taking in the scenery even while plummeting into the unknown.
It's like a glimpse into how her mind works, observing everything, even while falling.
That's fascinating. It's like she's already starting to adapt to this strange new reality.
And then she thinks to herself, after a fall like this, I can fall anywhere.
That's quite a thought, almost like she's embracing the chaos.
And chaos is exactly what she finds. She lands in this room full of locked doors. Locked doors.
Yeah, every single one. And they're all too small for her to fit through.
Oh no, what does she do?
Well, she finds a tiny key, and there's this bottle that says, "Drink me."
Drink me, huh? Sounds a bit suspicious to me.
It does, doesn't it? But Alice, despite being a little cautious, decides to take a chance.
What happens when she drinks it?
She shrinks. Small enough to go through the door, but now she can't reach the key.
Oh dear, so close, yet so far.
It's Wonderland logic. Every solution just leads to a new problem.
Sounds frustrating.
Alice is on an emotional roller coaster at this point. One minute she's growing giant after eating a cake. The next she's shrinking again.
The cake that makes you grow.
Only in Wonderland.
Of course.
And she ends up at a pool of her own tears.
Oh, wow. That's a powerful image.
It really is. It captures that feeling of being completely overwhelmed, lost, and a little bit sorry for yourself.
We've all been there.
Right. And then, as if things couldn't get weirder, she meets a mouse in this pool of tears.
A mouse swimming in her tears. Yep. And Alice, being Alice, assumes it must be a French mouse.
The French mouse.
Because, you see, her first French lesson happened to be about a cat.
Alice's logic is something else.
It really is.
But I love it.
Me too. So she tries to talk to this mouse in French.
I bet that went over well.
Let's just say the mouse isn't impressed.
Probably not a French mouse after all.
So after this soggy encounter, Alice stumbles upon a caterpillar.
A caterpillar.
Sitting on a mushroom, smoking a pipe.
Now that's a visual.
Right. And this caterpillar, he asks her a very simple question. Who are you?
Who are you? That's a big question.
It is. And for the first time, Alice actually struggles to answer.
I guess after all these transformations, she's not quite sure anymore.
And the caterpillar's advice doesn't exactly make things clearer. He tells her about the mushroom.
The mushroom? What about it?
One side will make her taller, the other side will make her shorter.
So which side does she choose?
Well, that's where we'll pick up in part 2 of our deep dive.
You know, it's funny. Even though Wonderland is completely bonkers,
It really is.
Alice never loses that sense of curiosity.
That's true.
She keeps asking questions, trying to figure out the rules of this bizarre world. Like, it makes me think, could we all benefit from that a little?
Benefit from what?
From holding on to that childlike curiosity.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
Even when things get strange or confusing.
Even when things get strange, absolutely.
It's like she's determined to make sense of it all.
Even though nothing really makes sense.
Right. Even though the logic of Wonderland is constantly shifting and changing.
It really is.
It makes me think of that feeling you get when you're learning something new.
Learning something new.
Yeah.
How so?
That mix of excitement and frustration
Oh, yeah.
when you're trying to piece everything together.
Like a puzzle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of peculiar details,
Okay, I'm intrigued.
this version of the story specifically mentions the White Rabbit's gloves. Yeah, it says he wears gloves.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's such a small detail,
It is.
but it adds another layer of oddity
Another layer.
to his character, don't you think?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, why gloves?
Exactly.
What's the significance?
Is he trying to be fancy? Is he hiding something?
Hiding something? Ooh, good point.
It makes you wonder.
Yeah, definitely makes you wonder.
It definitely adds to the mystery.
For sure.
And it ties into this other intriguing detail.
Ah.
At one point, the White Rabbit, he's frantically searching for his gloves.
Searching for his gloves.
Yeah, and his fan.
His fan.
He's worried that the Duchess will be angry with him.
Ah, the Duchess. Right.
He even cries out, "Oh, my ears and whiskers, she'll cut my head off. I know she will."
To cut my head off. Talk about intense.
Right.
The Duchess is quite a character, wouldn't you say?
She really embodies that arbitrary and often harsh nature of authority in Wonderland.
She does. It's like just the mention of her sends the White Rabbit into a complete panic.
Yeah. It makes you think about how fear can really drive people's actions.
Fear driving people's actions. I see that.
Even in the real world, you know?
Oh, absolutely. For sure.
It's like that saying, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Powerful words.
And the Duchess, with her threats of beheading, represents that extreme version of power.
Extreme version of power.
A power that's not based on reason or fairness,
Not based on reason, no.
but simply on the whim of the ruler.
Simply on the whim of the ruler. Wow.
And throughout her journey, Alice encounters all these different forms of authority.
She does.
The White Rabbit, the Duchess, the Caterpillar, and of course the Queen of Hearts.
The Queen of Hearts, of course.
It's like she's being tested, you know,
Tested. In what way?
forced to navigate these power dynamics and figure out how to assert herself.
Assert herself. Interesting.
In a world where the rules are constantly changing.
In a world where the rules are constantly changing. Yeah.
That's a really insightful observation.
Well, thank you.
It's almost like a coming-of-age story, in a way.
Coming of age. Huh.
Alice is learning to stand up for herself, to question authority, and to trust her own instincts.
To trust her own instincts. Yeah, you're right.
And isn't that something we all have to learn as we grow up?
Absolutely. Learning as we grow.
Speaking of questioning authority,
All right.
we can't forget one of the most iconic characters in the story,
Who's that?
the Cheshire Cat. Remember that famous quote, "We're all mad here, you're mad, I'm mad."
Oh, yes. Classic Cheshire Cat.
Ah, the Cheshire Cat.
The master of disappearing acts.
And those enigmatic pronouncements?
enigmatic pronouncements.
Right. That quote really gets to the heart of the story's exploration of sanity and madness.
Sanity madness.
It suggests that what's considered mad is entirely subjective,
entirely subjective. Interesting.
depending on your perspective.
Depending on your perspective, yeah.
And maybe Wonderland's absurdity is just a different way of looking at reality.
A different way of looking at reality. That's a great point.
It's all a matter of perspective.
All a matter of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what might seem crazy to one person
Yeah.
could be perfectly normal to someone else.
Perfectly normal to someone else. I like that.
And Alice, coming from a world of logic and reason,
Right.
she's constantly trying to reconcile her own understanding of reality
Your own understanding.
with the madness she encounters in Wonderland.
The madness. It's quite a challenge, isn't it?
It's like she's walking a tightrope between two worlds.
Walking a tightrope between two worlds.
Wow. Trying to find her balance.
Trying to find her balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something a lot of people can relate to.
Relate to that, definitely.
Especially in today's world where we're bombarded with information and different points of view.
There's so much information these days.
Right. It's easy to feel like you're going mad trying to make sense of it all.
Going mad trying to make sense of it all, that's for sure.
It's that feeling of disorientation.
Disorientation.
Like the ground is constantly shifting beneath your feet.
Constantly shifting. Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's one of the reasons why Alice's Adventures in Wonderland continues to resonate with people.
Continues to resonate. That's a good point.
Generation after generation.
Generation after generation. Mm-hmm.
It captures that universal experience of trying to find our footing.
Trying to find our footing.
In a world that doesn't always make sense.
In a world that doesn't always make sense. Yeah, I agree.
And let's not forget that the story is framed as Alice's dream.
Oh, right. Her dream.
It even mentions that she dreamt this one hot summer day long ago.
One hot summer day long ago.
Okay. That framing adds another layer of interpretation, doesn't it?
Another layer of interpretation. How so?
It's like the story is inviting us to consider the symbolic meaning
Symbolic meaning
behind Alice's encounters and experiences.
behind her encounters and experiences.
Yeah. What do these bizarre characters and situations represent?
What do they represent?
About her inner world, her fears, her desires.
Her inner world, her fears, her desires. I see what you mean.
It makes you think about how dreams often reflect our subconscious thoughts and anxieties.
They do.
Maybe Wonderland is a manifestation of Alice's own internal struggle.
Internal struggles. Okay.
Her growing pains as she navigates the transition from childhood to adulthood.
Navigates the transition from childhood to adulthood. That's a tough one.
It's like a visual representation of all those confusing emotions and experiences that come with growing up.
Confusing emotions? I can relate.
Right. The feeling of being too big for some things,
Too big.
but too small for
For
others.
small.
The pressure to conform to social expectations.
Social expectations. Ugh.
The struggle to find your own voice.
Struggle to find your own voice. That's a big one.
And there's that interesting detail at the end
At the end.
where Alice's sister, while listening to her recount her dream, she mentions that there were flamingos and hedgehogs in it.
Flamingos and hedgehogs? What?
The little wink from the author, you know.
A little wink.
Acknowledging that even though Alice's sister tries to ground her in reality, she also recognizes the power of imagination.
Power of imagination. I like that.
And the possibility that some elements of the dream
Elements of the dream.
might hold symbolic truth.
Symbolic truth.
Exactly. It's that blend of reality and fantasy
Reality and
Yeah.
fantasy, yeah.
that makes Alice's Adventures in Wonderland so captivating.
Just so captivating.
It's a story that speaks to both our rational minds and our wildest imaginations.
Rational minds and wildest imaginations.
And that brings us to one of the most chaotic and absurd scenes in the story.
Which is?
The Mad Hatter's Tea Party.
Oh, yes. The Mad Hatter's Tea Party.
The Mad Hatter and the March Hare, those two are a force of nature.
A force of nature. I love it.
They represent the ultimate disregard for social conventions.
Disregard for social conventions. Okay.
And the embrace of pure, unadulterated nonsense.
Pure, unadulterated nonsense. That's a good one.
Imagine being stuck at a tea party where the rules of time and logic simply don't apply.
Where the rules of time and logic don't apply, I don't know if I could handle that.
It's like a satire on social gatherings, isn't it?
Satire on social gatherings.
The endless pouring of tea,
Endless tea.
the nonsensical riddles.
Nonsensical riddles.
Right, the constant interruptions.
Constant interruptions. Yeah, sounds like my kind of party.
It makes you question those unspoken rules and rituals
Unspoken rules.
that we often follow in social situations.
We do, don't we?
Do they actually serve a purpose?
Do they serve a purpose?
Or are they just a way of maintaining order and control?
Order and control. That's a good question.
And Alice, bless his heart, she tries so hard to make sense of it all.
She really does.
She tries to follow their conversation,
Follow the conversation.
to engage in their riddles.
Engage in the riddles.
Right.
But she's constantly met with absurdity and contradiction.
Absurdity and contradiction, it's exhausting, isn't it?
It's like trying to have a serious discussion with someone who's speaking a completely different language. A completely different language. Yeah, I can see that.
And that frustration she experienced.
Get frustration. Yeah.
It's something I think we can all relate to.
We can all relate to it.
Whether it's dealing with bureaucratic red tape
Oh, don't get me started on bureaucratic red tape.
or trying to have a rational conversation with someone who's completely closed off to your point of view.
Close off to your point of view. Yeah, that's rough.
It's that feeling of banging your head against a wall.
Banging your head against a wall. That's a good way to put it.
And it makes you wonder
What?
if sometimes the best way to deal with absurdity
To deal with absurdity,
is to simply embrace it,
simply embrace it. Huh.
to let go of your need for logic and control,
Let go of logic and control. Interesting.
and just ride the wave of nonsense.
Ride the wave of nonsense. Okay, I like that.
Maybe that's the lesson the Mad Hatter and the March Hare are trying to teach Alice.
What's the lesson?
To loosen up, to have fun, and to not take life too seriously.
To loosen up, have fun, not take life too seriously. That's good advice.
It's like they're saying, sometimes the best way to navigate a world that doesn't make sense
That world that doesn't make sense. Yeah.
is to simply create your own sense of order,
Create your own sense of order,
even if it's based on pure whimsy.
even if it's based on pure whimsy. I like that.
And speaking of whimsy,
All right, what's next?
things are about to take a turn for the even more bizarre.
More bizarre. Okay.
As we head into the next chapter of our deep dive,
Can't wait.
get ready to meet the Queen of Hearts.
Oh, yeah.
Now there's an authority figure who really takes the cake.
Or the tarts, you could say.
Or the tarts. Exactly.
Right.
She's the embodiment of tyrannical rule, wouldn't you say?
Tyrannical rule.
Yeah.
In what way?
Well, her obsession with order,
Obsession with order. Oh,
her
sorry.
quickness to anger,
Quick to anger.
and that infamous catchphrase, off with their hair.
Off with their heads. It's a classic.
It's almost comical how she uses the threat of execution
Threat of execution.
for even the slightest offenses.
The slightest offenses. Wow.
It's like she's a caricature of those leaders who rule through fear and intimidation.
Fear and intimidation. It's a powerful tool.
It is. It makes you wonder
Makes you wonder what?
if there's a part of us that's both fascinated and repelled by that kind of absolute power.
Fascinated and repelled. I think you're onto something there.
Perhaps it taps into our own anxieties about authority,
Anxieties about authority. Okay.
both the power it holds over us
Power it holds.
and the potential for it to be misused.
Potential for misuse.
After all, who hasn't felt a twinge of fear when facing a figure of authority?
A twinge of fear. Yeah.
Whether it's a boss, a teacher, or even a parent.
A boss, teacher, parent, we've all been there.
Right.
And then there's the whole croquet game,
The croquet game.
which is pure chaos.
Pure chaos. Flamingos for mallets.
Flamingos.
Hedgehogs for balls.
Hedgehogs? What?
It's like the queen has created this whole elaborate game
This elaborate game.
just to exert her control.
Exert her control
Right.
and make everyone around her miserable.
Miserable. Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's a brilliant satire, I think.
A satire
On what?
on the arbitrary nature of rules
Arbitrary nature of rules. Okay.
and how those in power often manipulate them to suit their own whims.
Manipulate them. I see that.
It's like she's saying, these are the rules because I say so, and if you don't like it, off with your head.
Off with your head. There it is again.
And Alice, poor Alice, she's just trying to play along,
Trying to play along.
to understand the logic of this game.
For the logic of the game.
But it's like the rules are constantly changing.
constantly changing.
The goalposts are always moving.
It's like trying to hit a moving target.
Exactly. It's that feeling of being stuck in a system that makes no sense.
Stuck in the system.
But you have to play along anyway,
You have to play along.
because the consequences of speaking out are too high.
Consequences are too high.
And then it all culminates in the trial of the Knave of Hearts. The trial.
Who's accused of stealing the queen's tarts.
Stealing the tarts.
The trial itself is a masterpiece of absurdity.
Masterpiece of absurdity. Okay, I'm listening.
It's a parody of the legal system.
Parody of the legal system, all right.
With nonsensical evidence.
Sensical evidence.
Illogical arguments.
Illogical arguments.
Right? And a verdict that seems predetermined from the start.
Predetermined. Sounds about right for Wonderland.
The whole thing is just ridiculous.
Ridiculous, yeah.
The witnesses are unreliable.
Unreliable witnesses.
The evidence is flimsy.
Flimsy evidence.
And Alice, who's called to testify,
And Alice testifies. Wow.
she finds herself growing more and more frustrated
Frustrated, I bet.
with the whole charade.
The whole charade, yeah.
It's like she's finally reached her breaking point.
Breaking point. Okay.
She spent this whole time trying to make sense of Wonderland's madness,
Wonderland's mad.
trying to play by its rules.
Playing by the rules.
But now she's seeing the system for what it is.
For what it is.
A rigged game. Rigged game.
Designed to maintain the queen's power.
Maintain the queen's power, yeah.
And that's a moment where she finally snaps, isn't it?
She snaps.
When she stands up to the queen and declares, "You're nothing but a pack of cards."
A pack of cards. What a line.
It's such a powerful moment of defiance.
Powerful moment of defiance.
It's like she's finally found her voice.
Found her voice.
Her own sense of agency in this chaotic world.
Agency in a chaotic world.
And it's a reminder, I think,
A reminder.
that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable power,
Insurmountable power.
it's important to speak truth to power,
Speak truth to power.
to challenge injustice,
Challenge injustice.
and to refuse to play by the rules of a rigged game.
refuse to play by the rules. That's a powerful message.
It is,
And
it's like that.
she wakes up.
She wakes up, back in the real world,
Back in the real world.
safe and sound with her sister by her side.
Safe and sound. It's a classic ending.
Classic ending. But it leaves us with so many questions. It does, doesn't it?
Was it all just a dream?
The dream?
Or did Alice learn something from her journey through Wonderland?
Did she learn something?
Did she gain a new perspective on the world?
A new perspective
Herself.
on herself.
On the nature of reality.
The nature of reality.
And I think that's the beauty of Alice's adventures in Wonderland.
The beauty of it.
It's a story that invites multiple interpretations.
Multiple interpretations.
That sparks our imagination.
Sparks our imagination.
And that stays with us.
Stays with us.
Long after we've closed the book.
Long after we've closed the book. You know, speaking of sparking imaginations,
Yeah.
I find it fascinating that this particular version of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland,
This version.
it's part of the Oxford Bookworms Library.
The Oxford Bookworms Library.
Oh, that's right. And it's categorized as Stage 2,
Siege 2.
meaning it's designed for learners
Werner.
with around 700 headwords in their vocabulary.
700 headwords. That's interesting.
It's amazing how they've taken this classic story
This classic story.
and made it accessible to people learning English as a second language.
Learning English. It's a great tool.
It's a testament to the power of storytelling, isn't it?
Power of storytelling.
How a well-told story can transcend language barriers and cultural differences.
Transcend barriers. It's amazing.
It is. And it reminds us that learning doesn't have to be a chore.
Learning doesn't have to be a chore.
It can be a journey of discovery,
A journey of discovery.
full of wonder and delight,
Wonder and delight.
just like Alice's adventure down the rabbit hole.
Just like Alice. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Perfect note.
We've explored the absurd, the profound, and everything in between.
Everything in between.
In our deep dive into Alice's Adventures in Wonderland,
Alice's adventures.
hopefully we've sparked some new ideas,
New ideas.
challenged some assumptions,
Challenged assumptions.
and maybe even inspired you to revisit this timeless classic
Timeless classic.
with fresh eyes.
Fresh eyes. Remember? As the Cheshire Cat wisely said, it's all a matter of perspective.
A matter of perspective. I love it.
So keep exploring, keep questioning,
Keep exploring, keep questioning.
and keep that sense of wonder alive.
Sense of wonder live.
And who knows, maybe you'll even find your own rabbit hole to tumble down along the way.
Your own rabbit hole.
Until next time,
Until next time.
keep diving deep
Ah.